Today we're talking with Mark Delaney. Since leaving the Army just before COVID, Mark has spent the last 5 years helping veterans navigate the transition process and find their way in the business world. He's the host of the Veteran Semi-Professional podcast with over 230 episodes, which is super impressive and I highly recommend checking out. He publishes a weekly newsletter with resources for veterans. He bought a SaaS company. He recently launched several websites to help business buyers and entrepreneurs. But before all of that, he was just like many others, transitioning out of the military, unsure of what his future held, and just trying to get into business school to start his next chapter. This episode is like packing several decades of military transition advice into one conversation, so you might want to be prepared to take a lot of notes. Let's jump into it. Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military.
This is fun. I haven't been a guest on a podcast in a minute. This is great.
I was going to say, you dish it out so often, it's probably weird being on the other side.
It's fun. It's fun. I was like, okay, I set up exactly the same way and everything. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're on. We're on.
Oh, we were
Nice.
just singing your praises. It's been like one of our goals is to consistently post weekly, and you've been absolutely. I mean, it's 250 plus episodes. It's pretty awesome.
Mark, yeah, like we mentioned, we're impressed by the work that you've done over the last half decade plus and the stuff that you continue to do. Would love to get into more details about the couple initiatives you're working on now because they seem like you've gotten a lot of traction both on LinkedIn and other places. So we'll love to deep dive there. But maybe just to start a little bit of background, I remember listening to one of your podcasts where you talked about you got out of the military, you had done time in the 82nd, I believe, and then civil affairs time, and then you were transitioning out, about to go to Darden Business School, and you started traveling the world, or you were going to travel the world, and then it was interrupted by this little thing called coronavirus. Can you kind of take us back to that time of your life and maybe any helpful details from the military that would fill in some of the blanks?
Sure. Yeah. So I commissioned in 2011, spent 4 years as an infantry officer in the 82nd Airborne, and then went to civil affairs, which for anyone listening, if you're not from the Army world, we're a very niche part of the special operations community. So was there for 4 years, did a deployment to Iraq, Syria, and then I was a non-combat deployment to Saudi Arabia, even though we got combat pay, but I was living in a hotel. Doesn't really count.
It's a good
So then
combo.
I'm coming. Yeah, it's great. Came to the end of my military time, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my hands right now. I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay, so I had the GI Bill. Like my grandfather went to school in the GI Bill. My dad went to school in the GI Bill. My dad was like, go to school in the GI Bill, dude. So I'm like looking down the list of grad school options and was like, okay. I'd had an ex-girlfriend who went through law school, and there was a reason she was an ex-girlfriend and a current girlfriend, and it was because of law school. And we're like, no thanks, don't want to do that.
Is it
I
because she learned how to argue, or is it
no,
Way
no,
too
no,
good.
no, 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 no. It was just like it was a crazy amount of work. I was like, I have no desire to do this.
right?
And then actually, one of my really good friends, who's a really good lawyer, and he'll be coming on my show here in a couple of weeks. When I was thinking about this, he was like, Mark, there's two kinds of people in the world. There are lawyers and people who hire lawyers. He's like, it's better to be the second if you can. Okay. And I took that advice. I was never super great at math and science or anything. So just threw medical school, anything like that out the window. I had no desire to go be an academic or a researcher or anything. So literally the only thing that was left on the table basically was go get an MBA. Okay. So this wasn't some like grand master plan for me since I was like 12 years old to go to business school. I had no idea what an MBA was other than what the letters stood for until I started like researching it. But I was like, cool, general management, leadership skills from the military. They seem to really like veterans. This seems like the right path for me. So started applying to business schools and then eventually got into to Darden here at the University of Virginia, which I still live in Charlottesville. I'm wearing my UVA hat right now. And then about that kind of same time, it was like fall 2019 when I was like really in like my final couple months of getting out of the military, was just super frustrated with the transition process. I was like, I see information everywhere. It doesn't all seem to be in a consolidated place. It seems like there's a million and one organizations want to help me, but all of them are kind of doing different things. And it feels like everyone is just kind of giving me this like push to just go get like a job job just to get something. And I'm just like not feeling all these systems connecting in like an authentic way that felt right for me. So as I started uncovering new resources and researching things, I first started writing about it, spent kind of built up enough of an audience and body of work that then turned into a podcast and the veteran professional, everything that I've been doing for the last 5 years or so. So you're right. So my game plan was I got out in January 2020. All right. I had 9 months until I started business school and I was like, screw it. I'm going to throw my stuff in a backpack and just go travel the world for 9 months. Okay. Single, unmarried, no kids at the time, was renting my house at the time. I'm just going to go travel the world. Got about 2 months into it, 2.5, 3 months into it. And then I was in Bolivia, and then literally like overnight, like borders were shutting down in South America. And I was like, I need to go home. So I texted my sister and was like, hey, and at this point, like I'd moved all my stuff in storage, was out of the army. So I'm literally a homeless, unemployed vet, backpacking around the world. And so I texted my sister and was like, can I move in with you? And she was like, actually, she's like, if you could get here yesterday, that would be great. Because she and my brother-in-law were transitioning to remote work and with two small kids in the house. And I basically just moved in with them and became Uncle Manny until I went to business school. It was a ton of fun. It was like not what I had game planned for 2020, but was like a once in a lifetime experience, some really awesome time I got with family. So I enjoyed it. So then I went to B school, graduated. And while I was at school, and this will come into play later and everything, but took a number of classes about buying small businesses and understanding this concept of what's called entrepreneurship through acquisition, ETA. But I knew when I graduated, I was like, I want to give starting a business a new shot. I want to try that first. So towards the tail end of business school, I connected with a couple of guys who are actually already starting to work on a platform. And it was super cool, the idea. What we were trying to do, it was called Vet Journey. I think they're actually still working on it. I haven't caught up with them in, I don't know, 2 years. But the basic idea was let's take everything you need to do to exit the military, put it into an easy to use online platform to kind of guide you through the whole process. And then we would be able to use that data to then match you with companies that want to try and hire veterans. So the idea was that it was a recruiting SaaS tool for veteran focused hiring companies. After about a year, it just wasn't really going the direction that I wanted. So I pulled out and went to my wife and was like, hey, this isn't going right. But I've connected with a bunch of investors who say, hey, you're the kind of guy we would want to, invest in. I had learned about this whole world of like buying small businesses and stuff. And so quit the startup and went full time into a self-funded search. So I spent about 18 months looking for a small business to buy. 9 months of that was on the same deal, which then fell apart on the 1 yard line, which was super painful. But about 2 to 3 months later after that, I ended up acquiring a small software company. So we do background checks for private market transactions. So most of our customers are VCs who want to look into a founder before writing them a seed or pre-seed investment check. That's it. We're a small company, so that wasn't like the home run deal that I was really looking for, but it does well. And then since then have started a couple of new things. So with a couple of partners, we launched a site called sbalenders.co. Okay. And so the kind of basic idea is there's a lot of great information, publicly available information out there from the government about SBA loans. It's all really hard to access. So we're putting that into an easy to use platform, again, as a way for SBA borrowers to then come to the platform and then we can match them with SBA lenders. And then we get a referral fee if a deal ends up happening. Additionally, too, I have a directory of information and resources for people who are looking to buy a small business. The website is currently down, which is super annoying. I can't figure out what's going on, but it's businessbuyers.co. If hopefully it's up by the time this comes out. That's been the bane of my existence trying to figure that problem out. And then the last thing, which will be coming out here really in probably the next month or so, is called Tech Stacks. And so what Tech Stacks is, it is a platform for people. If you're interested, you want to see how does this founder, how does this digital entrepreneur creator run their business? What are all the tools that they use? Literally like pieces of software that like they pay for to help run their day-to-day life. This is a kind of like place to go to look and see how this person or that person, like what are all the different pieces of tech that they're using to run their business. So yeah, a lot of irons in the fire.
I did not know about tech stacks. That's really cool. I'd like to quickly double click on the time considering business school. Did you just take the approach that you had to get a business degree before you jumped into whatever the next venture was? Or did you consider starting something straight out of that army time?
Yeah, in all honesty, I do not think that I even would have had the vaguest idea to have launched something straight out of the army. Okay. I've absolutely seen people do it. Like I've seen people who left the military and then the next week were starting a business. I personally just didn't have that. Before I started business school, You could have handed me a bulletproof business plan and held a gun to my head and said, Mark, I need you to raise $1 million for this in a month. And I would have been like, I would be dead at the end of that month because I have absolutely no idea what to do. Right. On the other side of business school, I would tell you, like, if you gave me a bulletproof business plan and said, I need you to raise $10 million, I'd at least get pretty damn close, I feel. So I definitely had a giant gap in knowledge, just truly didn't know what I was doing. The other side of it was, 8 years, three deployments, like multiple series of breakups. Like it was like for anyone who's been in, like, especially your first 8 years, you're just in jobs and roles where you're just getting after it. And I had been shitting and getting for 8 years, and I kind of just needed a break. I needed to just get out of career focused life for a little bit and be at school, be a student, and just like the really great thing about, being a student is you kind of really just get to focus on yourself. You don't have a team you're responsible for. You don't have, sure, you have, projects and assignments and like homework and stuff, but you're not going to get fired because you didn't turn it in on time or whatever. You bad grade. What did you do? You don't have any like real responsibilities. And it's just I found it to be a really good time to just kind of pause, reflect, and then find my next plan.
Yeah, I love that. That's actually good advice because I think a lot of people think that they need to jump right in. And the time to reflect is actually incredibly valuable. And I think a lot of people do realize that while they're in the military, but it's like, when do you reflect? Like on your leave? The military doesn't really do a good job giving people time to reflect. So the fact that you were able to do that, I mean, it makes sense. I think if you have that great idea, go for it. But if you have the ability to take a second just to take a step back and not jump right into the next thing, that's also very beneficial.
I will tell you, I've talked to, my guess is probably over 1,000 veterans at this point from doing the veteran pro for the last couple of years. And everyone I've ever talked to who, got out of the Marines on a Friday and started a new job on Monday regrets that decision. They're like, I was not ready. I needed more time. I needed some time, space, and separation between service and work. Everybody I've ever talked to who like took even just a couple of months, maybe even just a month, if you can, like that's what terminal leave is for and stuff.
Mhm.
Give yourself just a little space to just do nothing. It's this very rare time in your life and career when you're going through a major career position like that, where you can just take a little bit of time off and it's okay. Just stay at home, hang out with the kids, travel a little bit. That's what I did. Nobody I know who gave themselves a little bit of space and time regrets it. Everyone was like, that was the best decision. I needed to do that.
Man, that's some incredible advice because the three of us are probably very guilty of this, but everyone likes to tout the fact that they're double dipping. We're getting our terminal leave, army pay, and we're also working a job. We might be working two jobs, and it's like, how much can we pile on? But if you can take that tactical pause, that step back, and really reflect on the eight plus, however many years you were just grinding, that's so important.
Yeah. So I talked to a lot of veterans that are contemplating going to business school, and they're like, okay, I'm going to get out in March, and then, I got to start school in August or whatever. They're like, I need to go find an internship at a bank or something to cover that 4 or 5 month gap to look really good for employers and everything. I'm like, listen, I know you're just chomping at the bit right now. And I know you just want to just run through the gates of hell again. Okay. And that's awesome. Like, my honest answer is just go do whatever the hell you want. Go be a fly fishing guide for the summer. All right. The real thing is, if you're only going to be, an intern for a couple of months, one, the company's just not going to give you anything like probably really important. So you're not really going to get a chance to actually do something impactful. So you actually have a risk there potentially for a future employer. They're like, why are you only here for 4 or 5 months? And what did you really do? And that you can actually end up hurting yourself by trying to jump into a short-term experience like that. I'm not inclined to believe that you're going to learn so much that it's going to transform your life. I just kind of go back to, if you can, just go do something else. Even if you need a job, take something like that's just fun and easy for a couple of months. If in this case, like if you're going to start school, a couple of months after the military or something, don't feel the need to just like, have to rush into the primo opportunity kind of next thing.
Or take the risk, right? And we've spoken about that too. Like maybe the fun and easy thing is like one half of your search, and maybe the other half is like the moonshot risk taking thing that you would never pursue, but maybe you have that 3 to 4 months to where, hey, you can like try your hand at it. And maybe if it's, playing the ukulele, like maybe you can figure out how to do that, like something that's going to be maybe life changing in the form of like just something you love to do. And you might never get that chance again to take that break and enjoy that time.
I like that. I even might go a step further and say, take that moonshot and try and go for like your dream
Right.
position. Go find that entrepreneur or something you've been following for years, reach out to them and be like, hey, listen, like this is my position. I'm willing to work for you for peanuts or free for 3 to 4 months before I'm in between military and go to business school or whatever it is. Maybe they say yes, and then maybe you go and you just crush it, and then they offer you a kick-ass job, and you're like, maybe I don't need to go to school because I got like this sweet thing that I want to go do now, you know?
Right.
Mark, I'm curious, after having thousands of conversations with transitioning vets and with other folks that are already in the business world and doing great things after transitioning, what are some of the main takeaways you've picked up on? What are some of the kind of key lessons, either from people going through the process or things that people have learned in their pursuits afterwards?
Yeah, good question. So I'll bring up a couple of lessons and tendencies that I've seen kind of time and time again. So one, everybody will say, have a plan. Your plan doesn't have to just know what you're going to do in like the first 6 months after the military. It doesn't have to be planned out day by day. You don't need, a spreadsheet for every hour of your life until then, but know what you're going to go do. You don't want to get out on Friday and then Monday comes around and you're like, oh shit, like I'm really out now and I got to go figure it out. Have at least some semblance of a plan. All right. The next part of that is give yourself a lot of grace because that plan is going to change. Guarantee it. It is going to change. It may change in a couple months. It may change in a couple of years. That is completely and totally fine. You're allowed to pivot. You're allowed to quit jobs. You're allowed to adapt. You're allowed to move. At this point, you've gone from military life to 100% your own controlled life.
Right.
Like the only person you need to impress anymore and the only organization you're responsible for is you and your family. So don't feel any type of guilt or regret because you started something, you quit, and you had to pivot on to something else. Okay. So give yourself a little bit of grace. I would really encourage people. Well, the other kind of part of giving yourself grace is give yourself a lot of time. I've talked to a lot of people who they didn't think that they were still going to be mentally transitioning from the military 3, 5, 10 years down the road, but they absolutely are. Everyone kind of goes through that a little bit, and that's completely okay. So give yourself a little bit of grace there. All right. I think the more time you can spend with thinking about what it is that you want to do because it's what you want to do and not what everybody else wants you to do. And I think we've been, and not in a bad way. I don't want to make the military sound bad for this, but I think there's a lot of like expectations and external pressures that get put on you as you're kind of going through the military career progression system that incentivize you to want to do things because it's what you've been told you have to go do. Okay. And then
Mhm.
you get out and you get to completely throw away that script and just go do something that you want to go do. So here's a pattern I've seen a lot of times is someone who they went to a military academy, then they went to SOF, they were a pilot, some type of elite high performing unit. They go to a great business school. They go work at a super prestigious consulting firm or investment bank or something. They're there for 2 to 3 years and then they're like, holy shit, I hate my life. Okay. And then they're like, they're like, I've been doing it for the last 10 years of my life. I've been trying to meet everybody else's expectations and do what everyone else expects of me as this. And these people who are very driven, they're very capable, they're very smart, and everyone's looking around at them saying, look, this is clearly the path you must go on. You must go down this
Mhm.
path and do this thing. And inside they're saying, yeah, but I don't like this path. It's not really fun for me. And then at some point they say, guess what? Like I can go somewhere else. So the sooner you can get to like that pivot point, maybe you kind of just need to go through the pain at first to get there. But I've just seen that pattern play itself out a lot. A couple of last points I'll make too. Use the veteran network 100%. I always say like it is real and it is powerful. Vets really want to help vets. I've had some super impressive veterans on my show. And in all honesty, like it has nothing to do with me. They're just like, I served 20, 30 years ago. I'm in like a pretty high power position now. And I just want to help people coming in behind me. Okay. And these are the kind of people it probably would have been hard for me to get 5 minutes with, but I can go to them and say, do you want to talk about yourself for 45 minutes and help veterans? And they're like, hell yeah, I'm in. And that's just like a testament to our community. People want to help out those who served.
I love what you said. And it's like the military obviously preaches the like up or out mentality, and it's a very laid out path. And I think when you transition out, you're right. People either seek that same sort of structure out, or they're like, I'm done with that structure. Even if it's not entrepreneurship, you can still pursue your own path and still do a W-2 job or what have you. It doesn't mean just entrepreneurs or not. But I think you're absolutely right, especially those who have been successful, have seeked out mentors in the military. Those guys, we say it on the podcast all the time, like most of the people you're surrounded by are people who chose to stay in. So if you end up thinking that you're going to get out, it's like, well, you need to identify what that path is. And, a title and a salary isn't going to make you happy. The title and salary might be what you think that needs to be, I need to attain this because there's a lot of eyes on me, especially if if you're not retiring. If you're getting out early after 5 years or after 8, there's more eyes on you, or you feel like there's more eyes on you because this guy got out and, he doesn't have a plan, or he doesn't, how many people say, oh, I got out at the 12-year mark and everybody says you should have retired, man. It's only 8 more years. And we also had a guy on the podcast that got out at the 18-year mark, which is a little harder sell there. But even him, he made the decision for him and his family, and it made sense. But there's a lot of prying eyes that kind of judge the transition.
Yeah. Literally every single person who was listening when you said 18 years was like, "Ooh, yeah, I don't know, dude."
Right.
But like we all just like kind of immediately judge this guy without even knowing like what him and his family's position was and like what
Correct.
they, wanted to do afterwards. And like, that's the important thing. I
Right.
understand, when I was getting out, I had an uncle who's retired Navy, and he called me up one time and was like, "Mark, what are you doing, man? Just what are you doing? You're an idiot. You're throwing this away. Like you need to just suck it up for the next 12 years and make it to 20 so you can get your retirement." And I was like, "Dude, I'm just not going to do that. Okay.
Right.
I'm just not." And just give yourself that permission to just do that. Again, the only people you need to impress are you and your family.
It's only a decade plus, man. Come on.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it.
Yeah,
Right?
people
Yeah.
minimize that time.
Yeah.
Jack, you didn't want to just sink 8 more years doing something you knew you didn't want to continue with? Like,
Right,
come on.
right. No, my favorite was Courtney posted this like compilation of the last day of me in the military, because we like went on post and signed the DD-214 and we were like doing stuff together. And somebody who we don't know, who has no idea who we are, was like, "Oh yeah, he like failed to make major and then got kicked out." I was like, "I'm already a major. What are you talking about? I didn't get kicked out of the military." But he's, it just trolls online.
Believe it
Yeah.
or not, I can spell my name, so I did make major. Thank you.
Right, right. Yeah,
Mark,
exactly.
I love what you said about escaping everyone else's expectations for you. And I think that's so much easier said than done, especially for high achievers that have been spending decade plus of their life just meeting and exceeding those expectations for everyone else, maybe except themselves. And it kind of takes us back to that initial point that you made. Sometimes it takes a step back to figure out, what are my own expectations? What do I want for myself? How do I kind of disassociate this from what everybody else has been demanding or expecting of me? I don't know if you have any stories, any other kind of thoughts on how somebody might practically do that if they've been grinding for so long, just meeting everyone else's expectations, and they may not even know what they want for themselves or how to even approach that problem.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to tell a story. This is of a guy that I know. I haven't had him on the podcast yet, which now that I'm saying it, I don't know why I haven't bugged James to come do this. But so James, I'll just keep it as first name for now. But so Air Force grad, then was, high performer in the Air Force Academy grad, high performer in the Air Force. We went to the same business school. He's 15 years older than I am, but like, got into a really good business school, then gets out, and, everybody, graduates, and everyone else is going to go be a banker and a consultant and make all this great money and everything. And he decides, I want to do something entrepreneurial. So he goes and buys a franchise, okay, with his mom. All right. They buy one franchise location. Fast forward 15 years, I caught up.
You don't have to say what franchise, but what realm are we talking? Restaurant or?
Yeah, it's in education.
Okay.
Okay. So fast forward 15 years, I caught up with him, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago or something like that. And James now has like over 30 locations.
Wow.
And he's like, "Dude, I get calls 3, 4, 5 times a week from private equity funds who are trying to buy me out." Okay. James is doing very well for himself. We grabbed beers once and he was telling me, listen, the first 3 to 4 years post grad school, I was dramatically under earning my classmates. Then he was like, "You're probably like year 5 or 6, I like caught up and was like about on pace with where everyone was at that point." And then he was like about year 7 or 8, he's like not even close anymore.
Mhm.
But wouldn't tell me what that number was, but I was like a lot more. So the point being is, I think he took a very long-term approach, and that's something I've been trying personally to understand more. Is I turn 36 tomorrow. Fun fact for everybody.
Happy
But I've
birthday.
thank you. Got another 30, 40 years in my career left.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a home run directly out of the gate. Okay.
Mhm.
Like you have a lot of time. If you take that long-term approach and just keep grinding like a little bit day after day and like just stay focused on, your vision of your life, then like you can get there.
I'm speaking as much to myself as to anyone else, but we've said this before on the show. The Army compensates you very generously in adventure and camaraderie, but maybe not as much in actual pay or compensation. And so I feel like the need or the tendency is to try and make up for that lost time very quickly. It's like right after business school, I got to make up for the 8 years that I wasn't making what I thought I deserved or what I thought I was worth in the Army. And that's just not true. To your point, you've got decades, and maybe we'll see what Brian Johnson does with longevity, but like maybe you've got even more than that to make great money. And in fact, with compound, Warren Buffett has made 99% of his money after the age of 60. So like with
Right.
compounding and other things, like there's so much time left. And again,
Mhm.
100% speaking myself here because I fall into the exact same trap.
Yeah, yeah. I was like just listening to a podcast the other day, and there's a guy by the name of Neil Patel. He's a big online marketer or something, and I think he on the show he put his net worth at like mid nine figures, so like about mid nine figures more than I am right now. Okay,
Does he count the cents in there or no?
I don't think anyway. And but then he's 38 years old, and I remember as soon as he said 38, I had this like sinking feeling in my stomach
Mhm.
of, oh God, I'm so far behind the power curve. Like, geez, Mark, you're a failure. And I'm like, okay, no, you're fine. I've still got time. And yes, I did. I think you do have to be like realistic with yourself and say, if you spent 5, 8, 10, 12 years in the military, like you did kind of take a step back compared to everybody else. Okay. There are people who are coming out, who didn't go into the military, who are gaining skills, who I think honestly can pay them off longer in the long run. At the same time, like I wouldn't trade it, I
Right.
really wouldn't. Like it set me up in so many other ways. And I have so many great friends from the military. I got married 2 years ago, and 4 out of my 5 groomsmen were guys from the Army. And I learned so much else about life. And I know that sounds like super generic. And I got to do some really cool shit that I wouldn't
Mhm.
have got to do otherwise. And there's no way that I would go trade any of that to have learned how to be better at spreadsheets 5 years earlier.
Social media is just, it makes you think that everybody's got a Ferrari and everybody's worth, $100 million. And it's no, I mean, that's not the case. It's like these people are just the video. A lot of those people do create so much content. So you see it all the time, but it's actually not as common. And even if you think that you should be in that tier, like a lot of those people just had different situations. You know what I mean? And I think,
Totally.
the goal is to keep progressing or pursue whatever your definition of success is. We've talked about this before, like, family plays a big part of it. You're going to make decisions business wise versus family. Sometimes it doesn't allow you to make the same, make $1 billion if you want to choose to be focused on the family, right?
The way I personally also think about my Army time in context of myself is, one of the things that I view about myself and want to do for myself is I want to be an interesting, cool person. Okay. Just like across life. Like, yes, I want to, have a great family. It's super important to me. I want to like have a good career, but I want to live a full life. And like my 8 years in the Army were like, that was a full life, man. Like that contributes to that. Like I did a lot of stuff that I'm never going to get to do ever again. I did a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff that nobody else even got like remotely close to doing. Okay. And I think it just gives me this like bounced view on life and existence. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I really would.
Right.
Yeah, so true, man. I mean, how many civilians out there can say that they've been able to jump a night combat equipment jump onto a drop zone that the last 1/3 is full of trees? I mean, people just don't get those amazing experiences, right?
Absolutely, dude. I like my one of my quintessential "this is cool shit" moments was I was the nighttime assistant jump master. And it was like my second time doing jump master duties on a C-17, so about like 100 jumpers in it, and we were the second bird in a 5 bird chalk stick. I can't remember the terms anymore. But so I like lean out the door, like literally standing at the door at night And I look behind and I can see like the silhouette of three C-17s flying in behind us. There's like a jet engine that's feet away from my face. And then I turn back in the door, and then there's just like 50 paratroopers with like red lens on, like all kitted up, just staring right at me. And I'm like, this is fucking cool. Okay. I'm not going to get to do this anywhere else. That's cool, man.
All of their
Right.
backs completely broken from the rucksack,
Right.
especially the 240 gunner, man.
Right, 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 right.
Right. No, we also, yeah, we get the broken hips, we get the surgeries, all the
Well, Mark, I wanted to go back and just say, I think that maybe a freshly minted MBA who's 24 years old, did not serve, goes out and buys a franchise with his mom. Maybe he gets to 30 locations, but I would argue maybe he probably doesn't. Like he probably doesn't have the grit that requires sticking through those first 1, 2, 3 really difficult years where he's making less, probably grinding a lot more. And maybe he doesn't have the grit that's been developed from your friend in the Air Force who did get to 30 locations. And while it seems like the 24-year-old probably has the leg up, I think at the end of the day, it looks very differently. So I love that point there.
Yeah, I think there's probably something to that. One of the things I learned going through business school, I think I went in with the expectation that I was going to be just like naturally like way grittier and like way have a lot more like emotional intelligence and understand people better and have like lots more tough stories of like moral predicaments and everything than a lot of my civilian classmates. And I continuously found that assumption challenged in the classroom of hearing people's stories and backgrounds. Like we had an ethics class, and everybody had come up with a couple of ethical dilemmas that they had faced in a previous job, a previous career. Okay. And then put that kind of in a business context. And I remember going in thinking, and like, we had like 5 or 6 other vets in my class. I'm like, dude, like, we're gonna have some crazy shit. No one's gonna have anything, tougher than ours. And then I was listening to all my classmates. I'm like, oh my God, this is like really hard. Like, honestly, don't know what I would do here. Clients inviting you out to a strip club, or, just like inner work relationships, they get dicey and stuff. I mean, all that is to say is I've learned not to underestimate my kind of colleagues and peers just because they didn't serve in the military, based on, you never know, like whatever kind of tough stuff in life they've gone through in some context. Now, I'm still going to beat them if you put a ruck on my back and we got to move distance, but unfortunately, that's not a day-to-day test in the business world.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
Well, going back to some of the stuff you're working on now, Mark, could you tell us a little bit more about what's kind of the vision? Where are you going? What do you ultimately see these between businessbuyers.co, SBA lenders, tech stacks? Like what are you kind of building with all of these?
Yeah, good question. And honestly, Griffin, this is something I've probably only started to coalesce around in the last month or two, maybe. Okay. So up until about a month or two ago, I'm just going to build cool stuff and do cool things. I started 2025 with mantra, like three things for myself: do cool shit, have fun, and get the pebble out of your shoe. Which just means like on a day-to-day basis, we have these little things that annoy us. And I'm like, instead of living with that, just fix it once so you never deal with it ever again. Okay. That's just like a personal thing for myself that I've been trying to work on.
Were
Okay.
those things you felt like you weren't doing before?
Yeah, I think so. So like the build cool shit, I don't think I was really allowing myself permission to just build more things. I see something that I think should be in the market, just quickly go through a prototype and try and make it happen. And I saw that with, for example, like businessbuyers.co. I thought that it should exist. I didn't find anything else like it. I spent maybe 2 weeks building it. Okay. And honestly, 70% of that time was me just trying to find like the right builder, like the right tools to actually build it on. And then I found the right thing, and honestly, it took me like 2 or 3 days. But then I did it and everyone loved it.
It's not
So
like you can code. You're not a designer or anything.
no, I can make the most basic of edits in code, but I'm not going to put fingers to keyboard and write code. So I'm very reliant on finding like the right builder to make something happen. But what I've kind of started to see, like the various things that I'm coalescing around, is a vision for a holding company that's kind of focused on B2B referrals and trust and verification services. Okay. So how do I refer one person to another? How do I provide some sense of, trust and verification between two parties doing business together? That's kind of what I'm seeing this all work in, as like an umbrella brand, Tier Wonder. But as I said, that's still rattling around in my head as like a thing to move forward. It's not like on ink and paper yet, but that's kind of where I'm starting to see, my interests, my abilities, and the things that I'm doing already kind of combining together.
And it's all self-funded. You mentioned the search from the beginning was self-funded for the original SaaS company. All of this, or do you have a couple investors that are involved?
Yeah, no. So I joke my search for business was a wife funded search. In a very honest note, like I think like the single best hack you can have as an entrepreneur is a great and supportive partner. And I have an amazing wife who, she's got a great career in and of herself. And so, she's paid the bills for a lot of times when I've been doing something else. But she likes doing that because I believe in you, and I know this is gonna, we're gonna get it. It's gonna be worthwhile. So having that great partner is a phenomenal way to advance yourself as an entrepreneur. But yeah, no, I've taken no outside capital. So we bought the SaaS company just ourselves. I mean, like me and my wife, and then everything else has been I've either made it like business buyers. I made myself. SBA lenders, I actually partnered with two developers, and so we've got a split between all of us, but they're really the ones who built it. And then tech stacks, I actually hired a agency who specifically designs MVPs for entrepreneurs. Okay, so like you have an idea, and they're able to do it for a very affordable price and come up with a really good product for what was, I think, all in cost me about 10 grand.
Well, I just checked wifefunded.com is available, so I'll give you
Oh
wrap this
man, that's
episode.
awesome.
Go snag that one.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I'm gonna actually race you to that one because I'm following the same. I'm a mortgage broker as well, and somebody asked like, "How are you doing so many deals?" I said, "I think the key to being a successful mortgage broker is have a top producing real estate agent as a wife who just gives you deals."
That's great.
It
Yeah.
works.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I do. I want to follow up. I feel like with all of these things that you have going on, they're kind of all scratching each other's backs. When you're focusing on it, is there one that you think is going to be the donkey that carries everything else? Or is it really just going to be like equally the load is distributed across? And how do you see that, or how do you plan that out?
Interesting question. I honestly think it's too early for me to really tell. Like all these are still pretty early. Like they're all like have traction. They've got customers. Like they're all still, I think, too early for me to be able to really decide, like, is there going to be one that races away between you and I? Tech stacks feels like it may be that one, but I'm also being realistic, and like, especially the ways that I plan on monetizing it at the start, I'm realistic and saying like it's not going to be giant numbers, whereas some of the other stuff. So to get maybe a bit of what you're asking, so people are like probably hearing this like, how do you manage all this and do all this and everything? I will say the number one thing that has come into my life that has made focusing on like multiple projects easier is having a kid. We had a daughter 5 months ago. And if you want to find like a forcing function to focus on like doing big shit in your life, have a baby. Okay. Because I have no time for anything else. All right. And also, I find I'm just like spending a lot less time like doing time wasteful stuff because I'm like, I'm either like working or I need to be like working to get home and spend time with my wife and my daughter. It's just a really good way to cut out a lot of distraction in life.
You're speaking our language right now, man.
Yeah, which is I'm not encouraging you to have a kid just to cut out distraction and work in your business. There's much more important reasons to have a baby, but that's very much like what I have found since becoming a father.
Yeah, best way to 10x your efficiency, have a kid.
I was seriously, yeah, yeah.
But also cut out the video games and the
Or just have the effect of a kid without the kid.
Yeah. And I think there is something too about having, multiple different lines of effort in my businesses of when I'm working on one of them, I'm only focusing on like the 80% thing that's going to move the needle. I don't spend, I just don't have the time to spend a lot of best time on any of them because I'm like, okay, I have 2 hours to focus on this thing. Like I have to do something big on it so they can go move to the next thing.
But in a way, that's good advice to somebody who's transitioning out. And it doesn't work for everybody, but we've spoken previously on, hey, you can have pretty good impacts by doing just a little bit of focused effort on something. You can get that 80% of the work done. And then maybe you fill in the 20%, like you either hire it out or, figure somebody that can help you with that last 20%. But even while you're active duty military, I mean, you can start the next thing. You can, at least learn some things that's going to help you with your transition if you're thinking about transitioning. And I know we spoke about taking a break and, like having that time where you can actually just step back. But if you do some extra effort while you're active duty military, the transition can be a little bit more at least the path can be paved, right? As opposed to, trying to just work the uphill battle just from scratch, not knowing really what you're doing.
Something I think about this sometimes of like when I think back to my time in the army, I was very, when I do anything, like when I choose to do something, like I do it all the way. Okay. There's very few things that I'm either like completely half-assing it or I'm like completely full-assing it. Okay. And I just pick a couple of things and I'm like, I'm gonna really full-ass this. Okay. That's what I do. When I was in the army, I was like full-assed until I'm gonna try and be like the best officer that I can be. Okay. So I didn't have any side hustles or occasionally I would have an idea, should I be working on this? But in my mind, I like didn't spend any time doing that because I was like, time spent working on a side business is time distracted away from reading military history or doing something like that, right? And sometimes I think like maybe I would have been maybe a little more balanced by not being so myopically focused. I don't know. But I've seen people be able to like start businesses while they're in the military and such and do both effectively.
I'm speaking a little bit to personal experience here. Because I felt like I had passions and hobbies outside of the military when I was combat arms. But then when I transitioned away from combat arms and did the ORSA thing, I just had more time because it was more of a desk job than a leadership role. Now, every role, I suppose, is some leadership aspect. But when I started to pursue the other things and actually realized that there was maybe something else for me, that it allowed me to be a bit more of a like a better subordinate in a way that I was giving true feedback instead of worrying so much about how my career was going to be affected by my discussions with my leadership. And I think it was something maybe I learned out of command and then applied later, but it was helped out by the fact that I was like, okay, the Army career isn't the only thing I have going for me. So it was almost enabling to have some other options and have there be at least something on the other side to be able to say, okay, if this comment, which is the right comment, if it doesn't work out for my career, that's okay. I'm not saying I was going into people's offices and being disrespectful or anything, but I was saying the things that needed to be said, which, when the army is the only thing or the military is the only thing, sometimes I feel like it stifles some of that feedback a little bit.
I think it's a great point, Jack.
I wanted to, and if someone is not a business nerd here, feel free to click the fast forward button 3 or 4 times. But I'd love to just go down the rabbit hole just a little bit with tech stacks, and maybe it's the same question regarding businessbuyers.co. But how are you building these databases? How are you collecting all the data? How are you getting in touch with people who are digital creators and finding out exactly which tools they use? Is it a manual scrape? Is it a lot of conversations? I mean, and maybe it's the same process with business buyers as well.
Yeah, so Business Buyers was extremely manual. Like one, I'd already spent, I don't know, I mean, probably realistically, a year and a half kind of full time in the business search world, and then probably another year and a half, 2 years prior to that, just, around the fringes of it. So it was like very familiar with the landscape. So at first it was just like a giant brain dump of what's everything that I've found on the internet, every person that I've met that I think is helpful to somebody, and just put it all out there. And that probably got me about like halfway through. I think I've got about 500 listings on there or something right now. That probably got me about there. And then I mean, you just kind of do like a little Google searching and then find like the right, pages that have a list of something else. Uh, I'm pretty good at Google. And so that was kind of really, but it was very manual. And Business Buyers is really, I'm just taking a website and kind of putting it into a tile that you click on. So there wasn't really a whole lot of, I didn't have to do interpersonal interactions with people to get started. Okay. TechStacks is different. TechStacks is very reliant on, I need, the right kind of founders, digital creators to go on there and share their tech stack. So, and to be clear, as of this recording right now, like I'm not doing that yet. I literally just this morning got like the final demo from the development agency so they can like kind of turn it over to me for producing everything. But that will be what I've been doing in the background is one, I will look on social media. People, a lot of these kind of folks that I'm trying to target already share their tech stack, meaning someone will ask them like, what's the tech stack that you use? What are all the tools that you use to run your business? And then they'll go on X or LinkedIn or whatever, and they'll just list it out. Here's everything that I use. So I literally have it's just a Google Doc where I just have taken the hyperlink from that post and put it in there so I can reach back out to them and say, hey, I already saw you did this. Can I just like basically take your information and put it on my website for you? And then you have a ready-made thing to share with people. I have, a decent amount of friends who are founders or, digital entrepreneurs in my network. And so they're going to be the first ones, getting bugged. Like, hey, dude, sign up for my app kind of thing. That's absolutely going to happen. Yeah. So that's going to be a lot of manual outreach of just, especially like getting the first group of users to get on there. Additionally, there'll be a kind of huge part of my launch strategy will be a newsletter that basically will just versus you having to go onto the platform and dig through stuff, I'll just share like one individual's tech stack. Okay. So that newsletter isn't out yet. Probably get first post published in the next week or so, but that'll kind of be a way to get helpful initial traction to the website. Have done a lot of written content over the years for the Veteran Professional. I've got a newsletter on there and everything also. So I'm very comfortable with writing to a large audience. And so comfortable that can be a way to drive traffic to the website.
I think that's a great idea, man. Are they just affiliate links or how does that make money?
Yeah, totally. Just affiliate links. And so, well, to start, okay. So
Yep.
let's say, Griffin comes on and you share your tech stack of all the different things you use, right? So let's just say there's 10 tools on there. Each one of those 10 tools then becomes an affiliate link. So you click on it, and then if someone clicks on it and they sign up and they pay, then I get a percentage of that. Okay. The really nice thing about a lot of these SaaS affiliates in particular is a lot of them will pay you in perpetuity. So as long as someone's a customer, you can keep getting a cut. Okay. Not all of them do that. Usually it's just for the first year or something. And then a lot of them also have like really high payouts, meaning you might get 50, 70. I've even seen some that will give you 100% in the first like month or two if you
Wow.
get people to sign up because they're just like really like they're just really looking for users. They're like, once we get a user, we know they're gonna stay, and then also they're really trying to keep customer acquisition costs down, and especially with SaaS companies, there's a lot of churn, and so I think they think if this person signs up off a recommendation from somebody else, they may be more likely to stay as a longer term customer. Okay. So to start, it'll be affiliate links. Eventually, my game plan is, we get to a point where there's enough traffic where I could go to think like a Tim Ferriss, okay, someone who's got like a huge following. And I say, listen, create your tech stack on here and you can put your own links on there, meaning you're going to get all the commissions from everything you share on here. You're just going to basically pay me like a monthly hosting fee to come on here. The last way that I think of monetizing this is, again, it's kind of traffic dependent, especially, but each tool that someone adds, each piece of tech that goes on there, then has its own page, right? So we're using Zoom right now. So Griffin would list Zoom in his tech stack, and then we'd have a Zoom page where we kind of lay out some like basic information about Zoom. I get enough traffic, I then go to the Zoom and say, hey, listen, do you all want to claim your page? Put a bunch of updated marketing information on here, put a product demo video, a lot more stuff to increase your conversion rate, and then you just pay me a monthly fee again, kind of like an advertising cost.
The digital marketing piece is huge, and I think what you're doing there is absolutely phenomenal. You're really you're connecting people. You're the market to connect people with what they need to buy, which is a great way to make money. I think it's a great idea. So that's phenomenal. I'm looking forward to hearing how it works out and everything.
Well,
What I've like very much uncovered and thought about myself is I really like connecting people. Like I just do. When someone comes to me and says, hey, Mark, do you know a guy who does this? Or like, can you give me an intro to that person? Like I love doing it. Like it fills me up. Like just this morning, there was a guy who was a podcast guest on my podcast 200 episodes back or something like that. And he's working on a new startup right now. And he was like, hey, can you connect me to these couple investors? And like connected him today. And it was super fun. So one, like I like connecting people. I also like just cutting through all the bullshit noise and recommendations of stuff that's out there and just giving people straight answers. And that was like a huge motivation in starting the Veteran Professional. Was like, I feel like there's a lot of bullshit noise information out there for being a transition veteran. And I want to put just kind of like a single source information of here's a good place to go to get no BS answers on good stuff.
Well, the number one question everyone has is not like, what are the 45,000 resources I could use? It's what are the two that matter? Which one should I actually check out and decide on? And to that point, that kind of perfect segue to a question I wanted to ask you. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about of the countless number of veteran organizations that are out there. I know you've probably talked to or worked with a number of them. And if you're comfortable sharing, which one should somebody that's transitioning out or considering that transition, which should they actually talk to? Which ones should they actually engage with?
Yeah, good question. Okay. There's a couple that come to mind. So if you have any interest in anything entrepreneurial, Bunker Labs is a great organization. What I would really recommend is see if they have a chapter in your local city. And it's just they usually hold like monthly or quarterly meetups or something. And it's just a fun way. You go hang out with other veterans who are doing something entrepreneurial. And it could be everyone from, a real estate agent to, so it's just a good way to go find other vets that are doing something fun like that. Okay. So if you have interest scratching entrepreneurship, Bunker Labs, another great organization to check out there is Vet to CEO. So they run online classes. I took it about 5 years ago, so I'm sure they've updated it and improved it since then. And I think they got acquired, which is a weird term to use for nonprofits, but like they got amalgamated into Warrior Rising, which is like another good one. But Vet to CEO is like a really solid programming to give you like very practical, very tactical information about starting a new business, everything from like marketing and legal and bank accounts and all like the real questions you have. So those two are really solid. There's an organization that I just started partnering with a couple of months ago called Shift Group. Okay. So they're not a nonprofit. They are a recruiting company. Okay. So I'll be very specific on that. But why I like them is they are specifically focused on veterans and former elite athletes because they kind of find that they have a lot of the same challenges in the job transition. And they have a really great program that you can kind of self-guide through. It helps you kind of get back to some of our earlier points, find like the right, find what really matters to you so that then they can use that to then match you with a good company. And I've had a lot of companies and people reach out to me over the years wanting to be a partner. And honestly, like most of them, I just say no to, or most of them are just like not really good partners. The stat that like blew me away when I was talking with Shift was something like they have I'm trying to remember it exactly. So the industry average for an attrition rate, meaning like you get hired and then are you still there 18 months later, is something like 50%. I might be making that 50% number up, but it's pretty high. It's pretty expected that like you're gonna get hired and then within 18 months you're gonna be gone. Shift is like less than 5%, meaning like they're just really good at finding you a job like that you're gonna be good at and that the company's gonna like you also. So that was all I like they when they gave me the presentation, I was blown away. They have really awesome veterans on their team who are helping other veterans. So Shift Group, huge plug for them. And then the last one, and again, this is a paid organization, I will say, Pre-Veteran. So Pre-Veteran is run by a guy named Jason Anderson. He's retired Air Force '06. And what I really like about Jason, I've known him for a couple of years now, is everything he does is backed by data and like a ton of research. He is like not shooting from the hip on anything. So like you pay a fee to go through a pre-veteran course, but like everyone coming out the other side is, yeah, that was completely worth it. And it's about $1,000 or so. I think like courses run between somewhere like 800 and like $1,000 or something, which when you think of like the potential ROI on being like that much more prepared for a good job is like a drop in the bucket. Okay. So I don't, people, you shouldn't be scared away by that.
What sort of curriculum is that? Is that for specific industries or just job prep in general?
Yeah, so he has, I think like kind of like their flagship course is generic job prep. Okay, it's kind of focused on not just it's focused heavily on getting you ready for the civilian workforce and making like the mental transformation from soldier to civilian employee. They spend a lot of time on, salary negotiations and like how to do a job hunt. So like some practical stuff like that. But they spend a lot of time focused on just like mentally transforming yourself and the differences between the work environment in the military world and civilian world.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's really actionable. The point you made is it seems like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it might be really worth it if you don't really know where you're starting or if you don't really have a very specific idea as to where you're going to land. And
Yeah.
even if you do, I mean, most of us from the military, we don't have that dad that was in, in business or what, you don't really have maybe the right mentor. So sometimes you just got to pay to play and take those courses like that. I think that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry. What I'll say in like those paid courses, and I know we're kind of winding down to the last few minutes here. What I'll say on the paid courses is one, your competitors and your colleagues in the civilian world, all of them are doing stuff like that and not thinking twice about it. We kind of got indoctrinated into the world of like free benefits in the military. And so we think that like stuff is always free like that, when in reality, everyone else is happily paying for it. And I would think, if your neighbor came up to you and was like, "Hey, I'm going to go spend $1,000 to send my son to football camp this summer," probably wouldn't think twice about it. You'd be like, yeah, cool.
Mhm.
It sounds fun. Like maybe a coach will notice him. He'll get a scholarship one day. Okay. Well, go spend $1,000 on yourself to improve your career outcome and potentially
Right.
make more money on that first job offer.
Or like any course ever is probably $1,000.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, like you can't even get a single certification for less than that right now.
Right.
I really appreciate those call outs, Mark. I think, what I would have given to have stumbled upon this conversation when I was getting out, to have your perspective and to hear these musings on organizations that, in hindsight, I know you probably didn't have the opportunity to work with any of them or go through any of this stuff as you were getting out, because some of them you either didn't know about or didn't exist. And so the fact that somebody could stumble upon this and have that very directed, like these are some great ones to work with, is, I think, invaluable. But as we do start to wrap this up here, our two-part question that we ask every guest is our one ask and one give. So to start off with one ask, what's one way that somebody listening to this could help you?
Yeah, sure. So my one ask for this crowd would be sign up for my newsletter. Okay, so I do a weekly newsletter, and so in there you'll find do some updates on like any new content that I put out, so like any new articles and like a new podcast. I try and come up with a new business idea every week. That's always a fun one, and it starts to get challenging for me after a while. I'm trying to come up with a new one every week, but it's fun. I also highlight a different veteran resource every week. So it could be like, paid course like I've talked about, or just a nonprofit that I think is really doing cool and awesome things. So I'll highlight that, and then also highlight a different veteran business every week. So just someone I found out there who has a product or service that I think you all might like and that you're giving, buying from a fellow vet, which I think is always fun.
Yeah, it's a great newsletter. I'm on it. Really enjoy it on a weekly basis. And where would people go to sign up for that?
Yeah, so you'll see the sign up on theveteranpro.com, or you can go, if you just look up the Veteran Professional Substack, I'll pop up there as well.
Great.
Nice.
And we'll link that in the show notes, of course. Any, I know you've given a lot. Any give something you would offer to people listening?
Ooh, yeah. I'll give you a last piece of advice here, and that's just I must guarantee you, everyone listening, and like myself included, plenty of times, like you're not dreaming big enough. Okay. I know, I think Jack, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. Like I grew up in a background where I probably couldn't have like thought of a single person that I knew that was like worth $1 million or something. Okay. Like that just seemed like a incomprehensible number to me. All right. Definitely not anybody who was like making $1 million. So I was like, the only people who make more than $1 million a year are celebrities and athletes. Nobody does something like that. That's insane. And then I remember being at a class in school, and we had Doug Lebda, who's the founder of Lending Tree, which Jack, I'm sure you know about if you're in the mortgage world. And totally normal guy, really nice guy, smart dude. And he was just like, there's 30 of us in this classroom. And I looked the guy up after that day. He had an estimated net worth of $300 million. And it was just like, holy shit. Like, I don't know, I was just like hanging out with this dude today. He's like a normal guy, right? Man, I can do that. Okay. And so it kind of took me a while to realize I can dream big and that's okay. And a lot of times, like I realized like I just wasn't dreaming big enough. And I think a lot of us coming from the military just aren't dreaming big enough. And I don't want to just put like the dream big on a dollar figure for yourself. There's lots of ways to dream big and do something else, but just let yourself dream big.
And I think you'll find that you'll accomplish those goals, especially if you codify them and just put pen to paper and actually put that out there. I think dreaming big is huge. And it also leaves room for not needing to, or you're not going to feel regret if you actually try, you know? And I think people will surprise themselves when they actually put themselves towards something. So,
And I can
that's
relate
phenomenal.
completely, Mark. Every position that I've been in since the military expanded my mind exponentially. I mean, I did
Mhm.
not know these worlds existed. And each time has been kind of a step up to learn, oh, this is possible. People are making this, people are doing that, and that's the return. That's insane. I didn't know that was even possible. But every step is that much bigger and that much, it just expands the world of possibility even more. And I think that maybe it's as simple as just taking that step into it afterwards, because you're not going to know what you don't know until you actually step into it and start seeing the world of possibility that's there. And I know personally, when I was leaving the military, I had no idea any of these things were possible, that people were doing this, like the lending tree guy. Like somebody can be worth that amount of money and still hang out in a classroom of 30 people and just be like a nice guy. Like that's crazy. Well, this has been great, Mark. Thanks again for taking the time to do this. Really enjoy the stuff that you're putting out into the world and help the way that you help veterans on a regular basis. So thanks for what you do. And it's been a pleasure talking here today.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for your time. This is awesome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures Podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures Podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.